I'll just start us on time. If he shows up, he shows up.
Yep.
All right. I'll call the order, school board meeting for February 23rd. First order of business is the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Second order of business is our mission statement. Rusty?
Sure. Our mission is to graduate all students with high levels of academic and personal achievement, ready for post-secondary excellence, prepared for productive, compassionate citizenship through research-based instruction and a collaborative system of support.
Thank you. Any changes or additions today?
We can remove 3.1 high school student competition.
Okay. All right, on to 3.0 presentations, and we'll skip 3.1, go to 3.2. Classified Appreciation Week proclamation. Pleasant Hill School District, Classified Employee Appreciation Week is celebrated every year during the first full week of March. In 2026, it will be observed March 2nd through March 6th in Oregon. Whereas education of youth is essential to the future of our community, state, country, and world, and whereas classified employees are the backbone of our public education system, and whereas classified employees work directly with students, educators, parents, volunteers, business partners, and community members, and whereas classified employees support the smooth operation of offices, the safety and maintenance of buildings and property, and the safe transportation, healthy nutrition, and direct instruction of students. And whereas our community depends upon and trusts classified employees to serve students, and whereas classified employees with their diverse talents and true dedication nurture students throughout their school years. Now therefore be it resolved that Pleasant Hill School District Board of Directors proclaims March 2nd through the 6th, 2026 to be the Classified Employees Appreciation Week. And be it further resolved that the Pleasant Hill School District Board of Directors strongly encourages all members of our community to join in this observance, recognizing the dedication and hard work of these individuals. Adopted today. Thank you. I'll say thank you personally. Anybody else have anything to add to our classified employees? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I'll sign that afterwards. On to number 4, public forum. So individuals who are on site during this portion of the board meeting, members of the public are specifically invited to present items of commendation and or concern. At the discretion of the board chair, further public participation may be allowed at specific agenda items are under consideration by the board. Individuals who are viewing online, we post the upcoming agenda to our website the Friday before regularly scheduled Monday school board meetings. This will allow for public comment prior to the board meeting. Please use the link there to share comments for the school board to consider at the upcoming meeting. Personnel matters may not be discussed at public or in public at school board meetings. Members of the public who have personnel concerns or commendations should share them directly with the district superintendent. Guessing there were none today. Okay. All right then. On to action items 5.1. Approve the February 9th school board meeting minutes. Any comments on those minutes from anyone? Issues? No. All right, we'll hear motions then.
I move approval of the February 9th board meeting minutes.
All right, that's been moved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those abstaining?
Yes.
Abstain. 4 yes, 1 abstain. And 5.2, approval of the personnel report.
So our monthly personnel action, this month is to approve the addendum that's presented along with this. In categories this month is licensed hire, it would be hiring of Mr. Alan Stearns. In probationary one for elementary, or sorry, no school, principal job.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Any questions from anyone? Comments or anything?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Excited about Mr. Stern's interest and the role that he's taken with the instructional systems and the academic programming and their assessment practices and the staff development piece. And if we move forward with this, you'll have my full support because your success is our student success. However, I'm still inclined to vote no without a competitive external hiring process. I want to know that we're giving them the best, and the best way I know to do that on the personnel side is through competitive hiring.
Understand. Any other comments or questions from anyone else? Appreciate your feedback. All right, with that, I'll hear motions, on the personnel report.
I move to approve the personnel report, resolution 2526.108.
All right, it's been moved. All those in favor?
Have a question?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Commissioner Garcia.
Jim, would you mind walking us through the protocol for the probationary hire over the next 3 years, if I understand it right?
Yeah. So it's covered in state statute. It's also covered in our policy, CCC, which is the policy we do need to revisit. It's currently suspended. But in statute, licensed employees, which includes licensed administrators and licensed teachers, serve a 3-year probationary period of time. And that's, there's some nuances to that. I want to make sure we can understand as well. A student position is still a licensed position, but it's covered under a different ORS. It doesn't have the same provisions as far as the probationary term. Essentially during a probationary term, and this is where we're coming up on this March 9th meeting, by March 15th, the board takes action yearly on personnel renewal of contracts and probationary people. If there's a non-renewal of that time, essentially the contract would be done and thinking of that during the probationary time. If no action is taken by March 15th, then they automatically move over to one probationary 2, or probationary 3 to a contract level.
So, am I right, probationary status is for 3 years,
It is, correct.
and at the 15th of March of the 3rd year, if no action is taken, the probationary status is removed.
Correct, and they become contract.
Okay.
Yeah. We always take action prior to March 15th. Yeah, essentially that March 15th deadline is always approximately 135 days. And so the statute says in order to be able to have specific years of services. That's the deadline, that's March 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions before we go? No. Good. All right. We have a motion on the table to approve the personnel report. All those in favor? Aye. Or all those opposed?
Aye.
One opposed. All right, passes 4-1. Reports and information, 6.1, our STAR data presentation.
Okay, so I'm here to report on our STAR going to the benchmark data, and I also have some clarifications that I'd like to make. That I think will help people, as I'm understanding it better, admins are understanding it better, and teachers are understanding it better, and it'll help the board and people outside to understand our students better as to where we're at, in our benchmarking. So STAR has two sets of benchmarks, and so I want to make that very clear, because we, as a district in the spring, are gonna send home. And in the future, the interim assessment access, according to the state law, to send home the STAR state benchmark, not the STAR district benchmark. And if you look at those two numbers, according to the district benchmark, 70.1% of students are proficient at this point in the year. According to state benchmark, we have 57.4% of our students proficient. And the difference between those two, our district, the district benchmark is normed by national norms. And so it's looking at students all across the United States and how are students doing compared to students nationwide. Whereas our state benchmarks are specifically linked to our state studies and our state standard scores. So it's how are students progressing toward mastery for their state benchmark assessments. And so as we look at this, state benchmarks help us to show clear cut scores with percentile and using percentile rank. They're a quick identification tool. They have consistency with looking at where kids are at right now as to where they're going to perform at the end of the year. And so that we can track their movement toward proficiency on our state benchmarks. We can use them for progress monitoring and planning instruction. When you look at the state benchmarks, it allows you to break it down by strand and domain. So it really informs teachers' instructions as to which areas kids are proficient in and which are areas they can hit class-wide to make sure those kids fill in all of the gaps they need. And it really digs down in that individualized data. The reason that district benchmarks are lower is because those are what are used for our response to intervention. So that tells us which kids we need to target for urgent intervention that are below the 10th percentile. Their need intervention, that's anywhere between the 10th and the 24th percentile. If they're strategic, meaning that we need to be doing things in the classroom, but they don't necessarily need a pull-out program, there's still areas to catch up in. Or at the 40th percentile, they're considered proficient. And that's based on the National Center for Intensive Intervention. So we use national norms for that, and that's where we build our RTI programs off. That's how we determine which kids need that extra support outside of the classroom. And so that's the difference between the two, is our state benchmarks really are telling us where we're going toward meeting our state proficiency, and our district benchmarks are telling us which kids really need that intensive support. And if we looked at the state benchmarks, that number would be larger. I also wanted to show you guys, so in Oregon, we have a lot higher standards to pass our state tests than most other states nationwide. So the reason STAR uses, and the National Center for Intensive Intervention uses the district benchmark at 40% is because that's where most students have to be, is at the 40th percentile nationwide to pass their state tests. In Oregon, when you're looking at our scores compared to STAR scores and compared to the nation, if you look at the third grade reading cut score for level 3, which then the correlating smarter balance scores are over to the side, students have to be at the 60th percentile in reading nationwide in order to just meet our Oregon state benchmark standards. So those percentile ranks aren't state percentile ranks, they're nationwide. So we're comparing these students against kids all across our nation. If you look at their reading levels, as the grade levels go up, the percentile rank the students have to be at nationwide drops. So by the time they hit 11th grade, they have to be right around, it's like 49.5th percentile in order to be at a level 3. So they have to be right around the 50th percentile nationwide to be at a level 3. And you'll kind of see in our reading scores, we tend to stay a little more solid throughout our years in school. If you look at the STAR map though, when you're looking at our students compared to what standard scores they need on a state test, the math requirements for them as being compared to other kids nationwide are a lot higher now. To pass the Oregon math assessment, you have to be at the 63rd percentile nationwide in 3rd grade, but by the time you get to 11th grade, Oregon expects you to be at the 84th percentile nationwide. So they expect our 11th graders to outperform 84% of the rest of the nationwide population. So I know when we talked before, as we see state scores come in, when we looked at the beginning, we saw that the state scores, we couldn't figure out why fewer and fewer kids. Like we had a lower percentile passing at 8th grade and 11th grade, it's because the standards get higher and higher. And 84th percentile is a huge number to try to reach. I did reach out to OE and ask them what their decision making behind that was. They didn't really have an answer for me. So I'm gonna there's several of us who are asking these questions as we're going to interim assessments and seeing this information from STAR and other programs that have been adopted by the state as to why in Oregon we have such high standards for these students to be able to pass out of state. So like to exceed the benchmark, they have to be at a minimum at the 94th percentile. So basically your only kids who are gonna get a level 4 on 11th grade math are those students who are in your talented and gifted population. They're in the top 5% of the nation. So that just kind of gives you guys an idea, and I thought it would help us see kind of where we're at and where we need to go. So it's gonna take some work over the next couple of years to get us back, like up to where we need to be, but just know that most districts throughout the state of Oregon are fighting this same battle right now, as far as trying to get their kids where they should be across the board. As far as our STAR winter early literacy, the early literacy report is the hardest one to understand, because you see that we had 115 students in green to start the year and now we have 80. That's because once the students are in the green, they no longer take their early literacy. So what's happened is those students have bumped off and they're only taking STAR reading now. So we haven't decreased at all. In fact, our red has gone down. So we only have 10 students who are in an urgent intervention watch right now. We have about the same amount of yellow, but that's because part of our red moved up to the yellow. And then our students who were in yellow moved to blue, and then our students in blue, who we had 30 before and now have 23, moved up to green. And then all those kids who bumped off green is because they no longer need early literacy anymore. So we actually had a really high rate of students who are at or above benchmark, according to STAR. They said most of the time in the first year by winter benchmark, compared to nationwide at the other districts that are taking this STAR, their first year, usually only 30% of them are at that benchmark level by winter. So they thought we should really celebrate our success because we've made a lot of gains in less than a year worth of using the program. Early literacy growth percentile rank. So we're gonna look at first the scores and then our growth percentile. The growth percentile compares students with other students performing at their level. So if you're performing at an advanced level, you're compared to other students who are already performing at an advanced level, because the growth is different than you would see at somebody who's performing at a lower level. We had 59.6% of our students district-wide show typical or better growth. 33.1 demonstrated a high growth. That means they've grown, they're above the 66th percentile, so they've grown more than 66% of the students nationwide. So we are actually achieving really great numbers with our growth percentile. At the beginning of the year, they asked me to be looking for 30% or better for district-wide growth. And we reached almost 60. So we doubled what they expected in the first year. As the program moves on and we have more years and more years in the freckle and the kids are, used to the program, the teachers are, said that you will continue to see growth, but even at that 60th percentile, we're the top right now in any of the districts within Oregon who are using STAR. So we should be really proud of that. Reading benchmarks. We have 24% of our kids who are at a level 4, so they're above state benchmark in reading. I'm using the state benchmark scores. 33% are meeting. So overall, we have, again, a high percentage either meeting or above state benchmark level right now. So they're expected to meet or exceed state benchmark. District-wide, that's the percentage right now that we have. Our graphs are all moving in the correct direction. So we want to see the green getting bigger. The biggest growth is really between that blue and it's moving up. So we had 212 meeting at the beginning, now we have 227, along with 168 who are above the benchmark. So our goal for this next time is to continue to see the red who are below level, that number go down, and the yellow and blue increase. The green typically increases at a slower rate because it's those higher percentage ranks to be in the green. And as far as overall growth for reading across the district, 64.9% of our students show typical or better growth. Pleasant Hill Elementary had 70.3% of its students make typical or better growth. So almost 3/4 of Pleasant Hill Elementary is making more growth than is expected at this point in the year. And Pleasant Hill Middle School, High School had almost 61% of students reaching typical or better. So that is a huge success. And then our math is where you can see our red dipped a lot more than in other areas, which is good. And so we're moving up right now. We have 20% meeting and 13% above. So we have about 33% of students expected to meet or exceed state benchmark. But we are still continuing to move in the right direction because as you can see, each of those numbers are getting higher as we go through, except we want the red number to get lower. Because those are our kids who are at that intensive intervention area and they're below benchmark. So those are the students that it's going to be hardest to get up to the blue level. With these numbers, what we do need to celebrate though is 64% of our kids, about 64% of our kids have shown typical or better growth. So even though we are not at where we would like to be for our meeting and above level, we are showing a lot of growth, which means hopefully by the end of the year, we're going to keep seeing that percentile rank. And over the next couple years, we're going to get those to look like the other graphs where we have over 50-60% of our kids in the meeting or exceeding. And so math is the one that we're going to need to spend a little more time working towards because where we started was lower. But overall, Pleasant Hill Elementary made about 69% growth. Students made typical or better growth, and then the high school had 59% typical or better growth than that. So a lot of celebration was made, because even though we may not see the numbers on the other part, we know that kids are growing at a faster rate than most students nationwide, which means we're doing what we need to be doing to eventually get them where they need to go. Yeah.
Are the math scores, well, first of all, how many other districts are doing the stars? Is it like a 10 or 100?
In Oregon right now, I think 15, with more coming. And most of them are a lot bigger than here.
And would most of those other districts have similar sorts of results? Well, what I mean by that is struggling in math, not so much in reading, they would.
Yep,
And it's,
across the board. In fact, ours look better than some at 33%.
and what's puzzling about that, if I'm remembering right, on the very first graph you showed, the expectations are much higher on that.
Exactly, which
So
is why
what's the theory? What happened?
that's what we're asking the state. Why? Well, because like if you look, and if we're looking at reading, it's a right around 50th percentile, like you have to be at around the 50th percentile nationwide, 55th percentile nationwide, if you look at the average. In math, you have to be around the 75th percentile average, 70th, 75th, to meet the benchmark. So our students have to be 20% higher in math than they have to be in reading to meet the benchmark. This is why we're questioning the state. We don't understand why they've chosen those numbers, and we're not really getting answers to that.
Well, yeah, I could question, but I'm not terribly bothered by the high expectations. What I'm more wondering is why does everybody suck at math? And there, I mean, it seems like it's.
Well, because if we had the national norm at 40th percentile or above, we would have almost 70% of our students passing math right now.
Okay, that's what I'm just.
Yes, so like, if we had what most of the nation uses as proficiency, our math numbers would look amazing.
Okay.
Because we have Oregon's interpretation of what proficiency is, then our numbers look a lot lower. Does that help?
No, that does help.
Yeah,
That makes sense. Yeah,
so, because when you look at the nationwide, as we compare, we're doing really well. But it's because that Oregon has such higher standards in math. And so it's just gonna take longer to get there, right? Because there's more gains you have to make in order to reach that point.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay,
Is there, for the state benchmark numbers, do they make those for the lower grades before state testing starts? Are you compared to, it's only third of them.
yeah, it's only 30 and above. And that's why early literacy can only use district benchmarks, because there are no state benchmarks for K through 2, and early literacy is only for kindergarten for second grade. So. Okay,
Thank you, Sam.
yeah, I asked them. Right. I missed it.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was a good start. I'm looking for much more data to come.
Yeah,
That's going on, so. Any other questions, final thoughts for them?
I'm just excited that this is what we've been wanting for a while. Starting to finally get it, that's. Yeah. A really meaningful step.
Yeah.
Some of, best progress that I feel is one of the best things we've done since I've been on board.
Thanks. All right, thank you again. We'll go on to 6.2, which is the Pleasant Hill Elementary School scorecard.
Hi. Much of this will look very similar to what I presented to you all. I don't know if you guys, I'll just go back to where. Sorry. So what I really focused on was any movement or changes or growth since our last reporting in December. So while not all stoplights will be highlighted during this presentation, this is being that are not currently in progress. There are just some more that we focused on in this period of time. So much to what Stephanie just presented, I have some updated data for you on our reading benchmarks. And the reading that I focused on for kindergarten through third grade, which is our early literacy reporting, both you and the state, is our curriculum-based measure. So Stephanie reported on the computer adaptive test that all students take, and then the curriculum-based measures are like a smaller test that at each grade level, like in kindergarten, it's letter naming, and then in first through fifth grade, it's oral passage reading, so how many words per minute students can read correctly in 60 seconds. And I included our benchmark categories, because when we report fall, winter, spring, or for stoplights, sometimes it's gonna be 4 times a year. It's a moving target, right? So students who are currently meeting benchmark in fall have a score of 25 or above, right? At winter, that's 38 or above. And then if they're meeting the end of kindergarten benchmark, they're meeting 49 or above. That's their score on this particular assessment. So you'll see that right now in kindergarten, 10 students are currently meeting. But that's because if they were already meeting the end of the year benchmark, we didn't retest them, right? Once they know their letter names, we move on to the next assessment. And so for all of these data points for kindergarten through third grade, I've also included who's already currently meeting the end of the year benchmark. So that's that spring benchmark. So when our goal is 70% of students by the end of the year will be meeting benchmarks, we can look at where we are in that. So in kindergarten, we're at 40% right now. That's at that halfway, that winter testing window. So we have another half of the year to get the rest of our students there. This is the chart for grade 1, 2, and 3. For oral, passive oral reading. So you can see that in winter, for grade 1, it's 35 and above. For grade 2, it's 91 and above. For grade 3, it's 112 and above. And then you can see the spring as well. So in first grade, we have 32 students who are currently meeting the winter benchmark, and we have 25 out of 59 students, so 42% who are currently already reading at the end of first grade expectation. And then second grade, we have 43, so 61% currently meeting the winter benchmark, and 53% or 37 out of 70 students who are currently meeting the end of the year benchmark. And then in third grade, 37 out of 74, so 50% currently meeting the winter benchmark, and 31 out of 74 currently, or 42% currently meeting the spring benchmark. So 42% of our third graders are already reading at end of third grade level. The next update for the stoplight for pillar 1 is in December, I talked to you about how we have all these wonderful STAR reports, much of which Stephanie shared with you, and we are working to integrate them with Oregon Data Suite, which is a data program we use through Willamette Education Service District, and we have that agreement signed, and Oregon Data Suite is currently in the process of building our district-wide dashboard for this data. One of the reasons why we use this program is because they will customize it to our needs, so we'll be able to pull up a student and it can show attendance, behavior, and academic data all on one interface, and it's really, really handy in looking at the child. In pillar 2, some of the movement, we've had not a lot of changes in stoplights, but some progress in our Care Solace data. So our students who are receiving counseling services outside of school has doubled in the last couple of months, which is a great thing to see. And one thing to highlight there is the communications that go into play in setting those up. You can see for 4 cases of 4 individuals receiving services, it requires 336 total communications. It's a lot of work to get these set up, but it's really successful for us. Our attendance, our goal is 79%. We are sitting right there. January was a hard month for the elementary school, lots and lots of illness. So we are hoping to really maintain or improve our attendance as we get out of these winter months and the illness months. Here is our behavior data from December to February, still looking incredibly strong when we think about what a positive behavior intervention system triangle looks like at most schools. Green is typically 80 to 85%. Yellow is typically 10 to 15%, and red's typically 0 to 5%. So we are just really much higher in our behavior in a good way than schools comparable.
Is that graph year to date? So like the next time we see this, the yellow red will be bigger just because it's more time.
Yeah. Yes. Other actions that we are working on, continuing to work on tracking our referral processes, again, monitoring our regular attenders. We are continuing to host our data teams. We had a great we did 1 week solid of data teams right after our winter benchmarking to really look at that data and make the best decisions for how we're serving our students. And then we reviewed that upbeat survey with staff in December, and at the time of this presentation, leadership was going to go over a scooter parent survey results. We did that last Thursday, and Jim will be sharing out some kind of overall themes that we pulled out of that. And in the elementary, 83% of our parents participated in the survey. Pillar 3, I'm assuming, I can't see it there. Again, not a lot of movement in stoplights, but still progress and some things being addressed. We have 87% of students who are served in academic support. And of those 87 students, 86.2 showed improvement on these winter benchmarking assessments. So that was 75 out of 87 of those students. So our goal is 90%, so we're almost there. We're going to continue delivering those really strategic interventions to help get all of those students to move that dial. And pillar 4. Last time I talked to you in December, this was something that we talked about the elementary school really needing to pay more attention to, because a lot of the learner profile attributes are currently in action in the elementary school. We kind of live the components of this every day, but how are we identifying those? How are we seeing where those are in action and where we might identify those strengths and gaps? And so staff have been working to identify where those attributes are currently in action. And we're working on a comprehensive document of all of the experiences that elementary students receive that align directly with the attributes, and where we have those opportunities to give them some more really strategic ways to practice those things. But that piece about demonstrating character is really built into our PBIS and the way in our Billy spirit and the way we recognize kids and have a character trait of the month. How are we helping kids really think critically and communicate effectively through everyday experiences or projects or showcases? And so we are currently compiling a list of what that looks like in the elementary. And that is the updates I have from today. Any questions? And I can go back to any slides. I know you guys are getting a lot of information this evening.
On the in progress or not started things, are you like, is there resistance? Are you finding resistance in that?
No, it's just a matter of, priorities, right, and time. I think it's, this year, really the focus is our structure of our literacy instruction, so a true MTSS model and the adoption of our STAR program. And my staff has done an incredible job of implementing that assessment system to fidelity. I mean, the training, the way that they have just picked up and run with it and are diving into the data and we're learning together. So some of that is just, focusing on those top priorities. These other things will come, but it takes time. Yeah.
Is there any support that the board could give you that would accelerate things, something you would double down on, or?
I think the support with our literacy structure as it is, and the changes that we've made, really supporting that. We have really robust core instruction. And that those tier two supports happen outside of that time. I'm continuing to support the STAR implementation and it comes with a big price tag, but it's, like you said, it's something that you guys have been wanting and it gives us so much information about kids. And then continuing to support Stephanie's work, she's been vital in all of the components of this and having the support in rolling with an assessment system this large has been. Are you gonna do clear to presentation? You're gonna do too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenna.
Thank you.
On three, Pleasant Hill Middle School scorecard.
All right, well. Injuries and illnesses are rampant right now. So it's not just the elementary, we had Caleb go out Friday night, Chris go out today around noon, so I'm sure I'll be sick around those things. But so I'm pitching in here for a little help. Similar format, and Caleb did a wonderful job of pulling data specifically from that December range into February, so we'll get to see those direct correlations. As with the other presentations, right? Green is, it's happening, it's great, yellow is still in the works, red, it hasn't started yet. And so if we're looking right at pillar one on the elementary or the middle school side. We see that this is where we're starting to launch the journey of our clearly identified and articulated learning targets. So in the beginning during February, during the first round, a lot of the process with learner profile was focusing directly on student-led conferences. And if you have any students in the middle school that go through that experience, it's really exciting because that way it's kids kind of reporting out to their teacher and to their family about some of the things that they're working on, and then embedding those learner profile skills of what am I proud of, what did I learn, how does this make me more like stronger thinker and more effective communicator. That's pretty exciting. And so just to like echo what Brendan was saying, it's not that this part isn't important, this is the next step and the next phase of work. So that was our December, and then so coming into February, we're moving into the yellows, we're starting to see this process be implemented. And what was done is it's been in different PD sessions where we've allowed for scaffolding and like checked staff to see kind of where they were in their own personal journeys with learning targets, and everyone can articulate what that process is. And then the work that we're leaning into is making that specific target accessible and interactable with kids. So that way at the end of the lesson, everybody can ask a kid, like, what's the most important thing you learned? And anybody else who's a parent, right? Sometimes students can be a little mum about what happened in school today, and this is kind of the idea that like, what was the takeaway from chemistry? What was the takeaway from algebra? And this can help unlock that. And so what we're looking for is how can we then, we provide a time for PE where we had in departments, 6 through 12 folks interacting with learning targets and like drafting their own and having their peers look and review those. And so the cool thing about that is that we're able to see in a building of our size, that specific work amongst the two buildings, 2 hallways into 1 building, to see like how this ability to scaffold up. This is STAR assessment, just like Stephanie was saying. And so as we're leaning into that, I would say the state's inconsistent expectations with reading being one and math being another, that can be a bit of a challenge here. And so this is our math assessment. And I would say STAR implementations go really well in the middle school level. There is different levels of tier 2 support happening with one of our educational assistants reinforcing the learning that's happened during core. And so there's 2 kind of lines of thought in that regard. We have core reinforcement, where we take a kid in a small group and booster up what's been happening, complementing the work of the teacher and like giving the information 2x, 3 times as needed in different ways. And then maybe a more traditional method that's been happening is for replacement, to take the student out of those core classes. They're in an isolated environment. What we have seen, right, across the state, that can compound the effects of being part of the work. Whitney can speak in way more detail on that, like the danger of that mentality. And so part of the work that Whitney's helped guiding our staff this year is like, we want folks to stay in their core environment. We want them to stay with their Gen Ed peers, we want them to stay in their learning environments and connect with their teacher. And so the STAR data is showing that, yes, we have a lot of work to do, but we're seeing some rises, right? In that yellow zone. And our blue, right, like, so it's humbling to see, and it's, I think what we were talking about earlier, is like, this is the work that is probably our most important. And so more data here as we're looking at failed marks, there's the December, once again, broken down by various groups. And then similar with our demographic data. And so just to interpret this one more time, like our dark green is no risk, low, it's high. And so you can see how some of our most vulnerable students are still struggling, and that work will definitely need to continue. But the benefit of a STAR is that we, instead of being like, I think little Alan is in trouble and we're gonna need to like talk to little Alan and his parents. Sometimes that's completely grounded in data. We see our kids all the time and we don't. And sometimes it's like, well, Alan just talks too much, which is true. And so little Alan sometimes gets extra support or so that a classroom doesn't necessarily. And so this is showing us exactly who needs that level of support, and then we break it down with their grades as well. So we see achievement and grades, and sometimes then we can even tease out what's behavior versus what's actual grade. Now, if we look here at pillar 2, once again, student well-being, what I think is fabulous about Pleasant Hill is we're looking at the whole child and how like students can thrive in multiple environments. And so, the investment in Care Solace, once again, just kind of shows like how many hours are being invested on for families, and how we see these reports and these communications increasing. And this is acknowledging that it's hard to be a human, it's hard to come to school, it's hard to do your job. Right, and then kids need extra support, and this is connecting people to those resources when they need them most. Similar as we're looking at our attendance filters here, and then our discipline and exclusion rates. So positives here, even though the data kind of shows, well, positives, if we look at our attendance, right, we can see 57 students were chronically absent in December, right? What we see is that while it's relatively consistent with 56, we're seeing that the more days we have in school, like theoretically our green zone will continue to rise. Like if you're sick and if you were out ill for 2 weeks, that's gonna make you chronically absent for a really long time, you're gonna need like a whole year to catch up. Or if you have family vacation and you're out, right, and you could be getting you fall in that category, get it when we work back. So the fact that we're seeing it stay consistent and actually shrink the red a little bit is a really positive sign. And then when we're looking at exclusionary practices, what we see here is a number of suspensions have been happening, right? And they fit within kind of our demographic expectations. And so we see that while students are getting those redirects, and sometimes that takes them out of school. We do see, it's important for us to know that is a tool. And then I think as we're kind of looking here, there's some exciting things that are happening at both levels of the middle high, where we're seeing with pillar 3 kind of jumping into how can we use the data and the investment in STAR to the best of its ability. And how can we increase staff awareness of that and their support. I think it's pretty exciting as the middle school is kind of leading 2 different ESD teacher PDs, so they're getting support both in a math cohort and then also an ELA cohort, which then reinforce the district's state reporting objectives of math and reading. I think that's a really positive side. We have 2 of our math teachers on the middle school side are part of that cohort, and one of them has been kind of like getting pushed forward as one of the model teachers, and so other administrators and other districts have come to watch her teach, and it's a really exciting thing. And so it's just another way that we can show pride in the work that we're doing, and it's It's a pretty remarkable thing when other administrators and other adults are celebrating the work that we're doing with kids. It's helps reinforce the why of our work. And if we're looking at future ready, I think what we see some focus here both on the PD. And so, you know, it's hard to do PD at 1:30 on a Friday when everybody's kind of thinking about their weekend. And we're really impressed with the staff leading into that work. And bring them extra coffee, so that way that helps as well. And we model what we expect with people talking, right, tying into learning targets, and then leading into the coach. And so that could be us as administrators, or that could be Stephanie as our instructional coach. And I would say the middle school has really leaned into getting support from Stephanie, so much that Stephanie's played school and now the high school club instead. So we're sure that more Stephanie, more to come, right? School centers. And then I think that just kind of focuses our work of now that we have some different levels of data, is like where do we go with that data? And that's pretty exciting stuff. So that's Kayla's presentation. Questions for Kayla?
6.4 was now high school scorecard.
Perfect. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So here's the high school level, similar format, like obviously we know our pillars now here. These are various places in which that we monitor our pillars, right? Our Bible curriculum, our instructional equity, and I think we're doing a lot of great work. It's pretty exciting to share and to brag about the work that our teachers are doing. If we're thinking about guaranteed Bible curriculum and especially learning targets, right, we kind of started to talk about those different PDs that are happening. The positives in which those PDs are working within their peer groups, and then more importantly, going through the process of creating them and getting feedback from peers, right? Sometimes if you're getting feedback from your administrator, your boss at any level of industry, right, that might make people feel unease. It can shut people down, right? But once again, leaning into collaborative practices that we first model with staff and then have them take into their classrooms, we see them moving forward. And so while we're not at that 60% yet to get to the green, we're seeing our learning targets emerge in our classrooms, and now they're part of our formal observations, and people are getting practice when it matters most. And so the next step for us is to then take these learning targets. I would say that would move us from this yellow into the green, is how do we take our learning targets into our course outlines that we were working on before? And that course outline is articulating what we want our students to know and how far they want to get through their semester. And then when we tie our learning targets into that level of work for our overarching processes for the units. And then once again, what's the most important thing each day? And so staff have been really awesome by asking questions about, like, if this is what we're working on, what's our most important thing? And most importantly, it's not something on a whiteboard for an administrator to see, it's something for students to interact with. If we're looking into structural equity, I think this is one of the strengths that we're doing here, and I have some stuff to share here in a second, but this is once again our every Monday, we have our data teams where we're going through A, B's, and C's, attendance, behaviors, and grades and credits. We have our 9th grade team, their next meeting is next week, I believe. And then we have some extended semester opportunities, which then led to like some semester one data review. And this is our data.
What is extended semester?
Great question. At the end of the semester, here's typically our credits that are earned. This is one of those graphs of kind of what credits were earned and where folks were at. We have had the practice, and so staff have been doing this for a really long time, and our work this year was how can we make it easiest on staff and still have students participate in it. Any student who landed in that 45 to 60, like 59% range, really close to proficiency, maybe an extenuating circumstance happened with like attendance or something happened during finals, they can then qualify for a 2-week extension on that class to then earn that credit. And so when we're having conversations with kids, if you go to school, you mentioned an hour every day for a week, that's 5 hours a week times 18 weeks for a semester, you're at 200 hours of your life. Now, if little Alan's having a hard time and I failed 2 classes, that's 400 hours that I need to retake for courses. When you kind of break it down for a student like that, this is hard, this is a lot, you can feel overwhelmed, right? The idea is, it's not how much work we do, but the learning that's the most important. And so when we put it into measures of proficiency, right, you need to learn X, Y, and Z to be proficient to earn this grade. Extended semester gives them that one extra little bit of chance to do that work before we start looking at summer school, retaking the course, or credit recovery in summer school or expenses school district. So every opportunity you can have to get students to earn the credit the first time, it is a benefit for staff because it keeps teaching their class sizes lower. And then once again, it's less program growth. So this is an opportunity that existed before, and we were trying to make it as easy as staff as possible. And I think extended semester helped with some of these numbers. Did I answer the question? Yeah, okay. And so,
Sorry, what's leader team?
oh, it's like our department leads, so great question, thank you. So the middle high, we started monthly meetings with our department leaders. And so we have grade level representatives for each level of the middle school. And then we have the department heads with respective positions in collective bargaining agreement. So that way we have a language arts, social studies, science, etc.
And admin is part of that, or is that just them?
Yep. And so we share the agenda, so like admin and staff get to build that together, so that we were tackling issues and move forward that we all need for. And so I would say that's been really positive. And so both those teams, and so we presented some of this data to that team this last week to both like bring data back to them, because one of the things that we did in our first round of scorecarding was here's the different pie charts. There's the 4 for each different grade level. In those pies, there's about 15 folks that had high or low risk in each of those grade levels. And so at semester 1, you all probably remember this is when you were students, right? Oh, the work is due, let's respond, let's get to it, right? And a lot of people started turning stuff in. And both the investment of staff connecting with students, support staff, counselors, PAs, admin, reinforcing that work with students, right? Working around failure. And so that's what I believe extended semester offers too, is another chance to say, hey, you're not gonna earn the staff. We're gonna help support you through that process. And so at the end of the semester, we had 1,898 total grades issued. Most of those 7 classes, right? 97.5% passing rate. That is outstanding, right? And that is not just a number, there's people behind those numbers. It's really hard work with staff, support really awesome kids. And so it's only 47 total Fs, so that's what that 2.5% is. So once again, that's not 47 kids, that's 47 grades. In extended semester, 36 students qualify for that 45% to that 59.9% range that are really close to earning credit. And so part of that process was, we're putting the learner profile task in action. What did you learn? What did you like? Why did you learn this grade? What got in the way? How can we overcome this in the future? So they're going through this reflection with support staff, and then we're building them up to ask the questions to go to the teachers, so that way they can demonstrate proficiency. It's not like, hey, like admin says you'll do X, Y, and Z. It's in concert with the staff member, but a way to empower the kid to have their important conversation. So at that point they have that, right? So there needs to be some level of accountability, but an F on a transcript doesn't motivate students. It oftentimes can just push them like farther down and like why they don't try. And so this is the way forward. So these are some of our most vulnerable students who are not finding the success that they might want in school. So but with 12 out of those 36, that's a pretty awesome number for students who are struggling in school. And that pushes our overall passing rate to a 98.1% for that one semester. We can maintain that for a semester 2, and then for 3 more years. What we're seeing is really, really amazing growth for all of our kids, and that opens up more possibilities for students. And that allows them to plan their 5th year once they're in school. And so that's pillar 2, is jumping into the similar process here. Once again, if we're looking at mental health supports, care solace, and counseling track and form, we stayed stagnant with the yellow. I'm sorry, these mushed up for some reason, right? School climate at SEL, we went green to green, and student progress seen once again green to green. I think there's some some pretty positive things that are happening here specifically on school climate and SEL. And so, and also with that level of work. So one of the things is we're looking at data. Student voice is part of that data set that we took back to staff members. They take this survey. We want to make sure that they have opportunities to see staff respond to this data. So these are staff climate action cards. So we did a gallery walk where we're putting different pieces of data all around the room, and then staff walked from station to station and wrote down their key observations of what students are telling us. Some of this is true response, and students said, I wish staff took time to get to know me and to go. Some of it was bar graphs, 5-point scales of strongly disagree, strongly agree, where it's talking about I feel seen by people in the building. There's bullying in the hallways, et cetera. Right? I'm sure you've seen some level of this data, but then we had staff go through it, write down their key takeaways, and then in table groups, like, this is what the data is telling us. And what can we do about it? Not to agree, right? Because it might not be the same experience from student A to student B to staff member, but what were they willing to do? And so what staff took the challenge for, which was really exciting, is how can we have more opportunity, how can we have more staff members in the hallway to kind of combat that chaos during your passing period, right? How can we have more meaningful group work now that phones are not in our schools, and maybe we need to help reinforce the social skills, once again, that would profile effective communicators in classroom. How can we have more support around academic and counseling mental health needs? So I took staff, I had a couple weeks to work on this, and then I took this number, these comment cards into our student leadership class. So that way student leaders would say, what are they experiencing? What are they seeing? This is what the staff members said they were going to do with that student data. We modeled the same exact experience so that students in our leadership class could see what the data was saying. And then so they both gave feedback on what they're seeing and feeling from the staff, and then had an opportunity to think about where they'd like us to focus. It's pretty exciting. And this is how we build trust and how we keep numbers alive in front of us, and how we can hopefully make sure that students continue to take this process serious, so that way we bring it back. And then if we're looking at Care Solace, I know this is kind of blurry last time, so I tried to enhance it. This is round one. We had 2.9 hours of time saved with the 133 communications. And just to kind of reiterate why we think it's important to save 4.5 hours and our communications are going up. And I had 3 different meetings today with students who are in various levels of crisis. And it's just really affirming that those numbers often aren't in the report card and can be lost. And I think everybody knows how hard it can be to people. And students are having that challenge today too, right? And so this is a really helpful resource in that regard. I don't want to go too long, but if we're looking at our attendance, here's round one versus round two, keeping that pretty consistent 91%. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to grow that, and I think a rainy spring will help senioritis at the high school level. And if we're kind of looking at this point, you know, we're still, I think attendance is that next piece, and in our Monday support team, we were talking about and using some of this data to help reinforce the work about, well, what do we do next? And there's a few students in particular that we're now putting in home visits because some of the communication hasn't quite worked yet. And so once again, the idea of correcting failure, if they're gone for 10 days, they're just gone and they're no longer on our numbers, but that's students, right? And so how can we bring them back and re-engage them? And so engagement is used in the classroom example of how can we get people to be active, but it's also how can we re-engage them into our system. This is behavior incidents, so it's kind of interesting to see like where students, what's happening and when and where. We were just looking for different data to use. We were really lucky, our exclusionary data remained stagnant, so that way we didn't have an increase in suspensions. And so that brings us into pillar 3. Once again, this is where we're looking at different logs and literacy. So once again, we're looking at our freshman teams, our STAR testing and training, our data teams, yellow, we're maintaining the work that we're doing there. And then if we're looking at student progress and monitoring, I talked a little bit about it, staying in that green to green zone. And I think as we're looking at STAR, we've successfully done two different terms here, or two different testing. And so with this being a reading, we're seeing I would say high school's probably the laggard in this, we're the slowest in this process, it's also super new to us. In high school, like credit has been the number one currency for so long, and we're seeing positive credit gains. This will then allow us, just like we talked about on the middle school side, to tease out where students might need more support in the math and English departments. And so we see the numbers shifting here, a little bit of dropping in our yellow zone, which is pretty exciting. And then also our numbers are just changing students coming in. If we're looking at this one. We accidentally pulled global districts, so I apologize to enter right here, but. It just allowed me out because I've been at school for 12 hours. So I have to log back in. So I'll pull that right back up. Sorry, just allowed me out of the system. What we see here is in our map, maybe not a surprise, our numbers in our red zone are much higher. I think this is our next step and a good opportunity for us. We've had two different trainings with STAR about how to do the process, and Stephanie's been pretty vital in this process. And now we're gonna have in our last check-in with STAR, they're gonna meet with our teacher team and Stephanie will look at that process. And now that we can see the results, and now we see like it proves it for us, so there's a lot of red. How can we then take where does this tie into our instruction? They crosswalk into the standards, which is like for a math teacher, it's like degree. So now we'll know exactly what areas we need to focus on. And then the question is, and I think the future work is that how do we build intervention class period so that way we can boost those skills that are low. And that kind of ties back into our on track piece. And so we're doing the same level of tracking. And I think when we're talking about interrupting failure, there was this big push in that last month, semester one, both from staff to like individual check-in conversations with students, and then support groups to have those follow-ups. And so we're disaggregating like how many freshmen are in this green zone and red and yellow and sophomores, et cetera. And then have like the conversation or the plan changes if you're, if you have 1D versus if you have 4 Fs. And that changes where that F's going to, like, are these 40%ers where we can like work our way up, or is this something that we have to start triaging, prioritizing? So it just changes the shape of the conversation. If you just tell a student to just do your homework, that doesn't always solve the problem. I really wish you did. And then if we're looking at number 4 here, future ready, similar pieces here. We're looking at yellow to yellow and green to green. I think as we're looking at really successful numbers in our credit earning, is both complementing teachers and having them share with each other. And that's what we were doing with our instructional tier 1 toolkits. Like how do you deliver instruction? How can you have kids move in their classrooms? How can they work with peers? And so staff are building that. And we're developing this toolkit so that way it's both written down so we can give it to staff that we onboard and say that these are some of our expectations and how we want students to learn here at Pleasant Hill. And then what happens when it doesn't work? So that's what we're in the process of right now. So staff were in our last PD, we're going through it and talking about how they review information, what happened when students failed the test, how do they go back to it, so we can pull that together. If we're thinking about a learner profile, I think we shared last time we have students. Breakfast of champions. We have learner profiles curriculum to be shared during one of our admin meetings, the ESD that invited us to go present on that work. And then if we're thinking about student responsibility, we're increasing the amount of student reflection, both grades and then also in their advisories, so they're doing some of that work. And then this is just screenshots of evidence in action, right? This is us at the asking folks for how can we celebrate together? What's a 6-12 initiative so we can bring people together and just appreciate it. If we compliment, praise, positive behavior that Brenda was talking about, compliment, praise what we want to see, we'll hopefully see more of it. And then also how can we do this in a public place so that way other students can see this and we can see the comments. And so the last one was in the high school commons, and we'll do the next one in the middle school commons. That'll be this Friday. Once again, it's just an opportunity to share and celebrate kids. And then this is one of the advisories, these learning targets was in modeling for kids so that they get used to it. But it shows kind of the work that we're looking at. How can I take control over my day? And make sure that I have healthy habits even when school's out. What's a routine that supports me? You know, how can I make sure that I have routines in January or after break, right? So it's a little bit of like rest, recharge, and back to it. And then our last one was like future planning in our 4-year plan. And what are we gonna do after high school? So that's kind of like, once again, future ready, and how can we make sure that the eyes on the goalpost of life after high school is successful. And then this is just part of the rationale of why we have a learner profile, and we shared that with our curriculum leaders at Lane ESD, and it's kind of fun to once again brag about the work that we're doing. Questions for me?
Where would you like to be in June, when school ends? What would you like to have buttoned up before you start next year?
Yeah, at graduation, volunteer field, celebrate with families and students. And I think with the work that we're doing with tracking and data, we could try to make sure that we retain as many students for that opportunity as possible. And so even in a meeting today where a student wasn't making some like having the success that they wanted permitted, it was a question of like, it's not an if you will or if you won't, it's okay. And so how can we make sure that we get you to that, like, how can we get you the diploma? If it takes a little longer, it takes a little longer, like that's the goal, instead of you graduate. This idea of where school gets really hard, so we just walk away, happens across the state, and it's an unfortunate big number, right? But how can we like let the number here represent the hard work of staff and then the love that the community has for the kids, like reflect that as well. And so want to make sure that everybody has as many doors open as possible post graduation. And so I think hopeful that number will continue to rise. But it's not the number, right? Sorry, I said that, I was like, right? But it's the people behind the numbers once again, right? It's smiles, it's the opportunities.
Any other questions? Right now?
What would you have us keep supporting that would most support for you?
I think on the high school level specifically, we need to keep working with STAR, and that's something new for a high school. Elementary's been doing like pull-out reading supports for years, and they're really good at it. And so I think that same level of work needs to happen in some capacity at high school with ELA. And so we have a small group of people going to the RTI conference next month, April. So that way we can get better about how we take this type of information. And then how do we then dig into the state standards and make sure that we're reinforcing. Once again, high schools have done before, like, hey, you failed algebra 1, so they're to take algebra 1. If you didn't like it the first time, not allowed to accept that. That's just what happens. How can we like leverage the work that we have right now with the semester and some of the different supports using the STAR data so that we don't have to have a study semester? And I think that work is really exciting. Yeah, so thank you for STAR.
Thank you. On 7.1, our calendar of events, any updates there?
Let's see, March, coming up is March 11th, PTO, meeting at 2:30, here at the community center. Also on March 11th, Booster Club meeting at 6:30 at the high school student center. March 14th, we've got the Billy pageant to take place in the high school gym at 7 o'clock. March 18th, we got a middle school, high school band concert at the high school student center at 6 p.m. And then March 19th, we'll follow up with the choir concert at 6 p.m. And then around the end of March, looks like also on March 19th, a education evaluation meeting here, at 6:30. Total events coming up with Billy pageant, band concert, and choir. Awesome. Yes, we've got Obop tomorrow here at elementary 140.
And then Molly sent me all an invite really exciting. We have 2 third-grade teams leaving to go to districts, which is really impressive. So. If you've never attended an OWAC, it's incredible what the kids have to read and retain. And then the team that goes on will go to the regionals on March 14th.
They put an immense amount of time and effort into reading and working together as a group and practice questions. It's fun to watch their, when they get into the competition.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. No other business? 8.0?
I went on the band trip, I started on the band trip to Canada. It was a lot of fun, no issues. The kids obviously had a great time. I think that they most enjoyed their performance on Saturday. We were the only school there from the United States.
No.
And it was referenced actually a couple of times by folks there, how, you know, current status of relations between countries, but I think that our kids being there, and their performance left a really good impression in the end. It showed the crowd was really impressed by our kids. There were people in the seats dancing, and people in the seats like visibly shocked. And they got a standing ovation, the only one, and the showcase that was done at the end of the night on Saturday, only a couple of groups got to perform in that, and they were the only group that got a standing ovation from everybody that was there. Just really positive reviews, and the kids, man, it had such a profound positive impact on them, that experience. One of the students is already putting in the chat that they just want to do that festival again next year instead of any of the other ones that we've done. You have to go back there. That's cool. It was a proud moment.
Nice. All right, and with that, we'll get to number 9, and we'll take a recess from our regularly scheduled board meeting to conduct deliberations with persons delegated to carry on labor negotiations and review and evaluate the performance of the superintendent. Yep. Or, oh, is that everyone? So. All right. Reconvene to regular session. Next board meeting is March 9th here at 7 PM and we're adjourned.